This Corinthian column capital can be found in San Francisco with the most elegant statue atop. And it was the subject for what was going to be a different video. But in drawing it, after I'd finished and I was looking at it, I worked out that I'd made 3 or 4 fundamental errors that to me really affected the overall viewing of the object. In effect, I'd given it several different eye levels, which is something that generally I speak against in my videos. So I plan to just start again and to do it and not make those mistakes, because it was still only a 12-minute video or something. But I decided instead to actually use the video, which you'll see now, but sped up, to demonstrate, firstly, just spotting errors in our drawings, but more importantly, to look at how I go about considering what options I have to lessen the effect of the errors, if in fact it's possible to do that. And I decided in this case it was certainly worth an attempt. And so I thought that I would repurpose the video to that end. So as you just watch for the next minute or two, my finishing the subject, can you work out where I've made my mistakes? Don't try so much to find a line that's out of place. My suggestion is that you look at the reference well and you get a sense of how it looks, and then you look at my drawing as it appears and think, is anything not looking right? Is it looking somehow twisted or distorted? And if so, why? What are the differences between my drawing and the reference that have made my drawing look visually awkward in some way? Because a lot of the detail is quite, in my mind, happily drawn. So it's not that in some ways it's a bad drawing, but it is a drawing with fundamental flaws. And I think it's a good example of how if we don't get some fundamental issues correct with our drawings, it doesn't matter how nicely we do the details. The drawing still has this discomforting feel to it. We still have this sense that something's not quite right. So when you look at this, and we're just about to finish now, can you see what's not quite right? You might even like to pause the video and just see if you can work out before we go on, and I'll show you what's not quite right, to my mind anyway, and also show you and demonstrate what I'm going to do, or what I did, to try and correct it. It's really, I think, a very helpful exercise to do. Okay, so if you'd like to pause the video and see if you can spot what the issues are with the drawing and perhaps what's caused them, now's the time to do it. So how are we going to try and fix these shortcomings, or at least lessen their impact? Well, I think I'll start on this side, which I noted should angle down more. It should be lower than it is. Now I can't make this side lower, but I can angle it down a little bit. So I'll do that first. There, so I've just visually pushed it down slightly, I think. And by raising this slightly, it also gives the impression that that's a bit lower. So now I've got this corner here, which doesn't peak up quite high enough, and this curve here isn't quite high enough. So this is where it gets tricky to know how many lines to put to kind of strengthen the spot where we want without making it look unnecessarily awkward. So here we're wanting people to see this profile line, the silhouette line, so to speak. And I haven't actually done this section large enough. Oh, I'm using the wrong pen. So I need to lift this up a bit, because with this side, we noted that it was, in our reference, higher than this side. Now I can't drop this, but I can make this higher again. Now, the best way to do that is simply to add, I think, an extra line that we hope isn't too obviously extra. Compared to the other side, that there's enough things happening here for it just to create the effect that this is actually dropped down somewhat. So the other thing the other main thing besides the profile up the top there is what's happening down here. It's just curved a bit too much. So I need to flatten this. And one way I could make it look a bit flatter was actually to raise it on the right-hand side. So having done that, we're just left now with this acanthus leaf disappearing too far into the thickness of the column. So the column is coming up here. So let's bring this in like that. Now I just realized on this side, I've actually left out a leaf that we can see, which sort of balances on this side a bit. So visually, do our perspective lines look a bit better? Well, let's compare it not with the reference, but with the original drawing. And I have just realized that one thing I can do is I can raise this line here slightly. Now, it's unavoidable that making this level of correction, there is some heavy-handedness now in our drawing. One of the options is actually to now increase the line work just generally over the drawing to make the heavier lines look a bit more compatible, a bit more intentional with the overall line work. But I think now that what we have is we have a capital that doesn't have the perspective inconsistencies, the perspective awkwardness of this line looking as though its eye level is a very different eye level to this section up the top, and that it works in quite happily with this shadow line here. having a good look at our drawings and working out if we think something doesn't quite look right, why it doesn't quite look right, and then looking at what we would have to do or have to have done in the first place, or what we could possibly do at that point to overcome at least some of the worst of the effects of our mistake, is a really helpful way of learning and growing. And if I were drawing this capital again, or really any capital again, this close up at this scale and this size, I would have a much sharper focus in my observation of exactly which points I needed to look at more carefully before I connected pen on paper. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Look, I hope you found this little exploration into the world of some of my mistakes helpful. No artist ever reaches the point where dealing with things that haven't quite gone the way we would have planned aren't part of our daily adventure. Why not have a go drawing this capital and use the things that didn't quite go right for me as a bit of advance warning of where you could look more carefully before you put pen on paper, and see how you go. And of course, you'll find the reference photo on my channel community page. But look, whatever you draw, however you draw it, and however many corrections you might feel you need to make at the end, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.